what inspired you to write this story?
As always, and everybody who does fantasy of any kind, fantasy writing of any kind, um, Lord of the Rings is always a big place to start. The inspiration for the vacuous simulacrum, or the faceless hunter that chases them, is very reminiscent of the Nazgul who chase the hobbits through the Shire. I remember watching the original Stargate movie with my dad and thinking how cool and interesting it was, at least the idea of it, that the human race had been influenced and, in fact, enslaved by aliens who are now gone, but the technology remains. And so this whole idea of people being able to rise up and conquer supposed gods is a very big theme of the story, as well as going to different worlds. And that's I think the main premise of God Heist. What happens when two cultures who are very different and come from incredibly different cultures, and even the magic they use is different, how they start to interact with one another, and it can get messy.
Could you tell us a little bit more about these worlds?
Right off the bat, first episode of God Heist, the characters are all from a world called Cygalia. Very classic D&D style world. If you don't know what that is, it's high fantasy. There are lots of different races. There are a huge pantheon of gods. The cosmology gets very complicated. Lots of history of heroes going about and doing heroic things, passing into legend, and the next generation taking over to continue the cycle. The thing that has changed in the status quo of Cygalia is they've discovered the existence of another planet. They start to interact with that world and their culture, and Volpakar, which is the second world, has their own history, which is very different from Cygalia, and has shaped everything about their culture, their peoples. There's lots that is new about Volpakar that would be new for the adventurers, and by extension, people who are already familiar with D&D lore.
So, could you tell me a little bit more about the kingdoms of Cygalia?
Yes. So, big difference between Cygalia and Volpakar are in Cygalia, there's more of a classic feudal kingdoms system that is set up and has been going on for. They're in the middle of their second age, so they're about 670 years into their recorded history. So the Cygalians have kings and queens and huge swaths of territory which who are ruled over by either malicious or benevolent dictatorships, essentially. The kingdoms of Cygalia like to pretend that they are all that exists, but there are vast swaths of land that are wilds and are inhabited by rarer sentient races like Goliaths, Aarakocra, or bird people, and obviously the biggest group who are not do not have territory of their own are the Orcish race, who have been fighting to get to establish a kingdom of their own since the signing of the Accord.
Okay, so you said that Cygalia has kingdoms. So tell me about Volpakar. Do they also have kingdoms?
So the situation on Volpakar is very different. Instead of having a wide pantheon of gods, they only had two. They had Darafel the Dark and Seriphiel the Light. And when those gods decided to go to war with each other, the world changed forever. They warred for 50 years and broke the world. People use that phrase on Volpakar a lot, but they're using it in a very literal sense. They're living on the remnants of a landmass on a planet which huge chunks of have broken off and become extra moons. These are very much the remnants of the people of this world. It's been 20 years since the end of the war, when their archmages, who they call now the Exalted Wardens, managed to end the war by capturing the two gods and imprisoning them on floating islands. Now, those people founded an organization called the Grey Orthodoxy and are working pretty continuously to try to fix the world, and everybody is working towards that same goal. They don't use money. Every town is functionary. There are only certain areas of land that are actually arable, that can actually support farms. So there are towns who farm and through the Orthodoxy distribute food to everybody who needs it across the land. Similarly, in the first town that the heroes go to, which is Balmoral, their job is to replant forests and provide timber for building houses and all of that good stuff. So lots of these cities and towns are functionary. They provide resources to everywhere else. So what you have is a very socialist system of government. It's a system that has a lot of room for corruption, but so far has been working really well for these people who are all survivors of a very terrible cataclysmic war.
So what makes this campaign different from other D&D shows?
Well, there are a lot of things, but first off, I've got to do an enormous shout out to all of the players and the people involved in creating it. All of the players, all of the people who are the heroes of the story are veteran D&D players. They've been playing for absolutely ages and bring all kinds of other skills to the table. The production value just keeps getting better and better thanks to the tireless work that these people put in. So huge shout out to everyone. Mark Crozier, Antonio Cazar, Neil Hara, Sasha Ann, James Wilson, and Morgan Hardy. We decided to call our series Hidden Realms because of this core idea that there are going to be many new worlds that are being discovered. And so a big theme of this first season and all of the seasons going forward, assuming that we get there, is one of discovery. These people are going to a world that is unknown to them and is therefore waiting to be discovered. What I always want to infuse as a GM into the series is this sense of wonder and awe and characters needing to figure out culturally, socially, maybe even linguistically, how to communicate with people from worlds not their own. And I think that's a theme of the world we live in today. How we communicate with one another and learn to accept one another's cultural differences while working towards a better future is so much of our global discourse. And that is something that we want to reflect and explore in our show. One of the main differences that I've found watching it back is how high the stakes are and how much the tension ramps up right from the beginning of the series. Heroes start off, they are plucked bodily from whatever their lives have been in Cygalia up to this point and thrown into a situation which is completely alien to them, which is foreign to them, with forces at work they do not understand and which want them dead. These guys land themselves in the middle of a deteriorating diplomatic incident, which is the result of a botched first contact between Cygalia and Vulpikar. And what that means is they are on very thin ice right from the beginning with the powers that be on Vulpikar. The chance of a player character fully dying in this show is much higher than in a lot of D&D shows that are out there. And the last thing that I want to do is kill one of the characters. But the reality of the situation is such that death is a very real possibility. And what that means is the stakes are very high. And that, for me anyway, is a big draw to the show. D&D is by nature a collaborative storytelling engine, but usually when you sit down to play with people just around your own kitchen table, you're telling the story for one another. We are very conscious of letting the audience in on this as an actual series that should be enjoyed by people, not just us.
How many episodes will there be, do you think?
It's a really good question. Structurally, we wanted to split up the story into seasons or arcs that are very defined. In terms of episode count, I'm entirely unsure. I had expected in my head for maybe a 16 episode first season. It's entirely possible that it'll go up to as many as 30. Don't know, but the ultimate answer is however long it takes is how long the season will last.
So where can the viewers watch the episodes every week?
Every week at Friday at 7 p.m. British summertime, we are streaming live on YouTube. We have our YouTube channel, Hidden Realms. Just go there and you can watch us live, get in the chat, join in. I, as the GM, have a lot of stuff that I'm doing, so I'm never in the chat, but some of the players are during the game. You can find it afterwards on YouTube. It goes up there almost immediately after we've streamed. But we also convert it to podcasts. You can watch them or listen to them, whichever you prefer. Please go to our Facebook page. Give us a like. We will respond to any direct messages on there. We've also got a Twitter. Our handle is at Hidden Realms D. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And see where the show goes.